So Nancy made a good point, but since we have a visually impaired person in the audience, we might want to read the slides out.
Okay.
Too.
As much as possible. I told her I would send them to her afterwards as well, because she has her screen reader. Okay. Okay, everybody, we're going to get started, and I'm wearing this headset because, as usual, trying to broadcast on Google Hangout for our people outside of Columbia, Missouri. I don't know if anyone will join us tonight, but maybe they will. So, so welcome to everybody that's here tonight. We appreciate you coming. I want to introduce myself. I'm Carolyn Omperon, and as of a couple of weeks ago, I'm now the chair or the local leader for the Osage group. And before I go on, I would like to thank our past chair, who has given us 4 years of service as chair of the Osage group, who was Jan Dye. So let's give Jan a round of applause, because that is definitely a long time to serve in that leadership capacity. So we certainly appreciate that. And after she's had a little break, hopefully she'll be willing to take it back, maybe. So tonight I just wanted to make one announcement about upcoming Sierra Club activities. There will hopefully be another newsletter coming out for those of you on our email list, but we do have a hike scheduled for Valentine's Day, February 14th at Rockbridge State Park in the afternoon. So weather permitting, if you're interested in that, there's information on the website and the Facebook page. Okay, so what are we here to talk about tonight? Tonight we're going to talk about our effort related to single-use plastic bags, or disposable plastic bags, as some people call them here in Columbia, Missouri. And what we wanted to do was talk about why we got into this effort in the first place, what is happening with the effort in terms of the ordinance and the timeline, and then also educate you with the tools to be able to talk about to people when they raise one of the more common objections. We've got, kind of something that you can explain what the situation is and give them a comeback. And then also some of the frequently asked questions about the ordinance, and then some actions that we can take. So we're going to start off with Jan is going to be our first presenter. And Jan is now, in addition to being the past chair of the Osage group, she's now on the city's Environment and Energy Commission, which is a citizens group that advises the city government on matters of environment and energy. And so she's been in a position to not only propose the ordinance to the city council as our chair, but then help shepherd it through the process. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jan.
Thank you, Carolyn. All right, give me a minute to get this. Okay.
There's copies of the handouts with everybody.
Right, yeah. Actually, it might be helpful to have those while we're looking at the slides too, so you can make notes if you would like to. But so yes, it was very fortunate that during this whole process, I applied to get on the Environment and Energy Commission and got on that commission just as our proposed ordinance was being reviewed. So that was perfect timing. And that commission, I must say, is filled with really awesome people, and they really helped write a great report to give to the city, which will be presented there tonight. So I guess that's maybe where we'll start, is actually at the city council meeting tonight, which is where I'm going to go right after this. The proposed ordinance and the report from the Environment and Energy Commission is on the agenda and will be talked about. We're not sure what's going to happen. I heard Mayor McDavid was on the David Lyle show this morning, and he said that he was going to ask for the ordinance to be put to a vote of the people. Of course, that also has to be voted on by the commission, so that may not happen. Um, we did have enough votes to pass the ordinance before Ginny Chadwick resigned. We were sure we had at least 4 votes, possibly 5, but now that's a little, we're not sure we have that 4th vote anymore. And and since the commission is now down to just 6 members, if it's a tie, it doesn't pass. So we have Barbara Hoppy, who is sponsoring the ordinance for us. I talked to her briefly yesterday, and she was going to advise that the vote be taken in February at either the 1st or 2nd February meeting. And during that time, that would allow us time to meet with each council person and make sure that we had our votes in place before that gets voted on. So hopefully that is what will happen tonight. It could, I don't think it can be voted on tonight since it's the first reading. And I don't even think the staff report is in yet either. So, yeah. So, why the Osage group proposed an ordinance? Well, the single-use plastics are a huge waste of fossil fuels. We all, we need a more sustainable lifestyle, and this is a very easy step to take, to just quit using plastic bags, right? The plastics are not biodegradable, and they result in pollution. We have litter. The plastic bits photodegrade, as I'm sure you've all heard me and a lot of us say many times now. They photodegrade into these small, tiny pieces of plastic, and then Fish and Wildlife mistake it for food, and it enters the food chain like that. So anyway, I think that you probably all know what the proposed ordinance is, but just in case you don't, I will reiterate that. Oh, is that on us? Okay, great. I'm sorry. So the highlights of the proponents. It doesn't apply to every retailer. It does apply to retailers that sell perishable food items. So that's going to cover every grocery store, including like a convenience store. It's going to cover those big box stores that have food sections, like Target and Walmart. So basically, other retailers will be left alone. They'll be able to continue giving out those bags. So clothing stores, department stores that don't have food, like Macy's or Dillard's or, places like that. Basically, any of those mall stores, they're still going to be able to give out plastic bags. So, the stores can't give out plastic bags, but they will be able to still give out paper bags. And to disincentivize the paper bags, the ordinance proposes a 10-cent fee on the bags. And, a lot of people are calling this a tax, but it's not a tax. The store keeps that 10-cent fee, and it's goods for cash. So it's not a tax. It doesn't go to any government entity. And the point of the 10-cent fee is to get people to bring their own bags. We don't want people to use plastic, but we don't want them to use paper either. We want them to bring their own reusable bags. Okay. The ordinance also contains just a section that allows stores to reward customers for bringing their own bags. So, for example, right now when I go into Hy-Vee and I bring my own bags, they count up my bags that I brought in and they give me 5 cents a bag back onto my bill. So that's what's called a reward. They're rewarding you for doing the right thing. And so the ordinance contains a clause that says basically that nothing in the ordinance is going to keep those merchants from continuing to do that. And then the Environment and Energy Commission also added a section to waive that 10-cent fee for paper bags for low-income people that are on food assistance programs, federal or local. The ban is there is an exemption or an exception made for restaurants, produce bags, and when bags are used for sanitation. So for those purposes, bags will still be allowed. And then the ordinance takes place 6 months after it's passed. And the Environment and Energy Commission actually reduced the amount of time. I think the Sierra Club's proposal gave them a year to comply, and the commission thought that was too long and that 6 months was plenty of time to figure out how to comply with it, and they made that change. So the timeline. We started working on this over the summer and presented the proposal to the City Council during the public comment period on October 20th last year, 2014. Then at that time, at the end of that meeting, it was referred to the Environment and Energy Commission, which met a series of times over the fall, November and December, finishing up the report just before Christmas, or no, right after Christmas, before New Year's, and got it submitted to the city clerk. So we're hoping, and with a unanimous approval of the ordinance or of some ordinance by the commission, which was a really big deal. But the commission was really in favor of doing some kind of ordinance, and they made some changes to the one that we proposed, changes that the commission felt made the ordinance better and stronger. So we are expecting a vote soon, hopefully no later than February, and that's where that stands right now. So we did lots of things between the time that we decided to work on this and now. We got a group together, a committee. It was comprised of both members and non-members. And we also established a partnership with Missouri River Relief, and Melanie Cheney from Missouri River Relief is here tonight. And they have done so much to move this forward. They lent us the rights to show the Baggett film, really helped us organize that whole event, and have been right with us ever since. We also made what's called a bag monster. It's basically a costume. Well, that's me in the bag monster costume up there. It's a bag made out of 500 bags, or a costume made out of 500 bags, which is the amount of bags that a single American receives from shopping in 1 year's time. It's meant to, it really makes a statement when you have it on. It's this huge thing, and people just are amazed. They just can't believe it's that high of a number, but believe me, it is. We have distributed, let's see. Okay, yeah, and we made appearances at the Boonville River Festival, the Sustainable Living Fair, at Ragtag when we showed the film, And we even were in the holiday parade, which was fun. Not well-attended parade because it was bad weather that day, but the people that did see us were very impressed. We've distributed online and hard copy petitions, which I think we may be up to about 600 signatures now. We really need to get working on that and get some more signatures. We plan on going to the Wild and Scenic Film Festival and collecting some signatures there and a few other places. We've had a reusable bag making workshop. We've had 2 op-eds in the Columbia Tribune, one written by Nancy Browning, who's here tonight in the front row, and another one written by Melanie Cheney in the back row. We've been on the KOPN radio show. We've had lots of press, numerous newspaper articles and blurbs on the radio. And we are also, one thing I was working on today is getting a slot on the David Lyle show soon. So that'll be coming up. So our future plans. The very first one that we can check off is this meeting tonight. We wanted to have a general meeting and distribute some talking points so everybody knows what to tell people when they express their displeasure with a bag ban. So we'll get to those soon. Carolyn will step you through those. We're going to circulate some more petitions, get those number of signatures up. We're going to write some more letters to the editor, some more opinion editorials in all the papers. We want to hold some more showings of the Baggett film. And we're going to be sending out some automated email messages to our membership that will generate emails of support to their city council members. It's a little, you've all seen these online. You fill out a form and it automatically sends it to your representative, and you can write a comment in there. And we are also planning on some face-to-face meetings with the city council members. So that's a lot to do in the next month. So we'll be working really hard to make sure all those things happen before that vote happens in city council. We may not get to every single one of them or do if the vote happens at the next city council meeting, that only gives us 2 weeks. So we need to really hustle, especially, I think, on getting those petitions signed.
It doesn't happen that soon because they have to have a first reading.
Right.
So they can have the first reading and then 2 weeks later.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the soon.
So actually, I think it can't happen at the first meeting because somebody's going to be gone. One of the council members isn't going to be there.
They can still have the
But I think it's one of our votes that's going to be missing.
first reading and then 2 weeks later. Or
Yeah.
later.
Okay. So the next part of this, I think Carolyn is going to want to go over. So I'll hand over any questions?
At some point, I have a question about the petition, so I don't know when that's asked.
You can ask it now, I think.
Oh, okay, I was curious about people that live outside the city limits. So, I had a few pages on the hard copy sign, and then I'm crossing people off that aren't even in Columbia, and then myself, I live in Columbia, but only outside the city limits. So.
Okay. Well, the question for those people who are tuning in online is a question about people who live out of the city limits, whether they should sign the petition or not. And what I will say is we have a separate petition for out-of-town residents to sign because we do believe a lot of people come to Columbia to shop from outlying areas. So we need their input too. And the petition is, these petitions will not be used, to force a a vote or anything like that. The petition is worded pretty vaguely. It's just a petition to show support of an ordinance of some kind. So it's pretty generic. I'll give you, yeah, there is one. So you can take that and make copies of it if you want to. Are there any other? D.
What's the sanitation clause? What is that?
For sanitation purposes,
What does that mean?
um, it's like, it's for, it's really for if you have something that will soak through a cloth bag or the bag that you have, if it's a cloth bag or something and what you have is wet and drippy and it's gonna get on your clothes or be messy. That's what that's all about, because there was some concern about that. So
Will that actually be those kind of bags, or will it be like, like
Yes.
you buy it'll be those?
it'll be the
kinds?
single-use plastic bags. There is an exception for that. So
Usually, like if I buy meat or something that's slimy, I put it in a
produce bag. Yeah.
So I was thinking, why would they need these? But okay, fine.
That was not my idea. I would just like to remove my name from that. But anyway, so Carolyn, if there are no other questions for me, I'll turn it over to Carolyn. All right.
All right. Okay, so just continuing, again, my name is Carolyn Ampron, and just continuing with some of the facts that helped us decide that we wanted to get into this effort. So, and some things that you can quote to people. So based on the population of the United States and the average rate of a person, or based on the population of Columbia, I should say, and the average rate of a person who uses plastic bags for shopping, how many bags they use in a year is approximately 500. So if you calculate that across the city of Columbia, just in Columbia, we use 57 million of these bags annually. So that is a huge number just in Columbia. So, and then, when you talk about these bags being made with a precious resource, it takes 12 million barrels of oil to produce 100 billion plastic bags, which is how many are consumed in the United States every year. So, people are always talking about energy independence. Well, 12 million barrels of oil, it would be a good amount not to use for something frivolous like a plastic bag. The Environment and Energy Commission did research and discovered that already 173 jurisdictions in the United States have imposed some kind of regulation on a single-use plastic bag. So we're certainly not, the first to do this, and hopefully not the last. And then the other feature is a lot of, yes? Yes, the entire state of California right now is, they've passed their ordinance and it's not yet taken effect, but it's on its way. And then a lot of people say, well, I recycle my bags, and so that should be okay. But actually only like 12% of the bags get recycled. So that is not a high number. And, we've had recycling of bags always available and people just don't do it. And so, and there's nothing right now that's really going to convince people to start recycling. So, that doesn't seem to be a feasible option to get everyone to recycle. Then also we checked with some of the cities that passed bag ordinances. It was because of problems in their stormwater system. Because the bags, when they create litter, they also clog the stormwater systems, cause overflows and things like that. So we checked with the stormwater educator here in Columbia, and he said that he would classify plastic bags as the third most frequent source of litter in the stormwater system. He said actually the number one thing is the plastic drinking bottles, either water, soda, or whatever. So, but plastic bags are certainly a problem, and they would unofficially support getting rid of them. And then I also checked with the recycling coordinator for the city to understand what problems the plastic bags cause in the recycling process, because the city of Columbia actually does not accept plastic bags for recycling. But I see many people when I walk my dogs in the neighborhood putting those bags in the blue bag. And so I wanted to check about how much problem that causes them to have to sort it out of the waste stream. And she says not only does it cause them extra effort to sort it out when it comes into the facility, but if they miss one, then it can get caught in the machinery. And so then it stops the whole process and they have to get it out of the machine and all that. So, so they are not a favorite of the recycling people either. So those are some of the facts. Jan mentioned this earlier. It's really important to understand that these plastic bags don't biodegrade, they photodegrade. And what that means is that in sunlight, they break down into smaller and smaller pieces of plastic. So if they're not exposed to sunlight, then, you know, like in a landfill or something, they could be there a really long time. But in sunlight, they will break down. And the plastic bags are also really harmful to wildlife for multiple reasons. A study that was done by the European Commission of North Sea birds found that 90% of them had plastics in their stomach. So, you know, this is definitely, plastics are definitely entering the food chain of both birds and aquatic animals, and it is a serious hazard to them. Here in the picture, it's a picture of a sea turtle consuming a plastic bag. And this is a problem because sea turtles actually, they think that a plastic bag floating in the water looks like a jellyfish to them. And a jellyfish is one of their most favorite foods. And so they try and eat it, but it's not a jellyfish, it's a plastic bag. And then that plastic bag clogs their intestinal system. And ultimately, if they don't get help from a human, they end up dying. So it's a definite threat to sea creatures, which is one of the reasons why California implemented the ban. Some of the other facts, one of the things that we are fortunate to have Dr. Von Saul here at the University of Missouri. He's a researcher, and he talked with us at the movie showing at the Ragtag Theater. And what he researches is the effect of chemicals like BPAs, things that are found in plastic, on the human endocrine system. And so one of the things that they have found is that these plastic chemicals like BPA really do impact the human endocrine system. So the point here really is that we have, in the United States, we use a process where we accept something first and then later and the EPA approves it, and then later we prove that, oh, it was bad for us. In Europe, they do it the other way around. The companies have to prove it's safe before they allow it on the market. And I wish we were more like Europe in that respect. And so, you know, scientific studies have not been able to show that plastics are safe for humans. And many of these plastics, we don't even know what the chemicals in them are. So like plastic bag manufacturers won't reveal exactly what they use to make their bags. So, but these studies, because of the impact on the endocrine system, indicate that we need to reduce our exposure as humans to plastics. The other thing is that as these particles break down, they get, as we talked about, they get into smaller and smaller bits of plastic. And so then they're consumed by birds or by fish, both in the ocean and in our lakes and streams. So if you're a person that eats fish, you know, you are potentially consuming, you know, this that they have consumed. And one of the problems is another study found that these toxic bits, when they're floating around in the ocean, they actually become like a sponge for some of the chemicals that are floating in the ocean too, because of past pollution. And some of those chemicals that they found in these plastic bits that were floating in the ocean, which are not part of the initial manufacturing process, are things like PCBs and DDT, which was banned years ago, but is still out there in the environment, floating around in the ocean. We know it's bad for us. We know it's bad for wildlife, but it's out there being sponged into these plastic bits that are subsequently then eaten by fish or other mammals. Like whales eat the plankton, and they absorb a bunch of these plastic bits thinking that they're eating plankton, and instead they're sucking in plastic. So so there's a real problem with the plastic entering the food chain. Okay, so anybody have any questions on that before we switch to some of the common objections? Okay, So as we've been working on this, as we talk to people, they tell us why they object, and people also online on the newspaper articles have been commenting. So we've been collecting objections, and so the most common objection that we hear is, "I reuse my plastic bags around the house." Well, yes, it's better to reuse your plastic bag than just throw it in the trash. That is better, but it would be better not to use the plastic bags in the first place. And one of the things that we want to communicate to people, if they're really attached to their plastic bags, is that there's still going to be a lot of sources of plastic bags, even if Columbia implements this ban on plastic bags at checkout at the grocery store. Because as Jan said, we'll still be allowed to have produce bags if you want to use them, those plastic bags where you put your apples in and carry them to the checkout. And then I actually have been, since we started working on this, I've actually been trying to pay attention to all the other plastic bags in my life that I never paid attention to before. And so there's bulk food bags, there's bread bags, there's frozen food bags, there's plastic food storage bags. Of course, there'll still be bags from clothing stores. So there's a lot of different sources of plastic bags that are still, unfortunately, going to be in our environment, but could be used by the people that want a bag to reuse for either picking up after their dog or cleaning out their cat litter box, or any of the other things. And one of the things people talk about is reusing the bags in their small trash cans. And so there'll be other sources of bags that they could do for that, but better yet is just dump your trash can into your bigger trash can and don't use a bag. Sure.
I also, that number that you cited at the beginning, 500 bags per person per year. So one of the things that I think I'm going to start responding with when people tell me they reuse their bags, especially people who use them to line trash cans or to tote things around. I personally don't see how you can find 500 ways to reuse. I mean, you'd have to empty your trash can 500 times. That'd be like twice a day.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and then the other thing is, I think I'm also going to start saying something like, give them a hypothetical situation. Like if we didn't pass a bag ban and you could no longer get bags at these bags at the store for your groceries, but you could go to the store. Say you could go to the store, and in the aisle where the plastic bags are, you could buy single-use plastic bags if you wanted to. Would you buy them to line your trash cans and to tote things around? And I really think the answer is going to be no to that, which shows that the only reason you're lining your trash can with these things is because you have them, and because you're trying to find a way to use them that isn't really needed anyway.
Gretchen, did you have a comment?
Yeah, the group I work with, we represent a lot of low-income folks, which is why I was really glad to hear and interested to hear a little bit more about the part of the ordinance Jan mentioned earlier. That I believe she said something about how the ordinance, there will be exceptions for people that are on food stamps and things, maybe?
Yes.
So that's great. What I wanted to say that made me think that Jan was talking is, I'm guessing that, I'm sure not all the people giving me these objections are like that, but some of the people, it could be people on a very fixed income that are reusing these bags for other things they need around the house so that they don't buy the trash bags. So that could be part of that.
Yes. And let me just repeat in case somebody is listening on the web. She was saying that one of the situations may be that people on fixed incomes reuse the bags because that helps them avoid buying other bags. So, Alice?
I was just going to respond that I think there's going to be an initiative by the city to also distribute reusable bags in low-income communities. There'll probably be various drives like that.
Right. And one of the other things we thought we might do as a group, if it passes, is many of us, like me, who've been using bags for years, I've over time collected a lot of bags and I have more than I need. So we thought we would, have a collection and then take them to places where, low income people would have access to them and they could, have them for free. So, yeah. Okay. So the other thing, and I, just a lot of people object because of the dog waste issue and the cat litter issue. And so, I've been trying out different methods because I have 2 large dogs. So prior to us taking this on, I actually bought biodegradable plastic bags that I picked up at the store. But my husband thought that was silly because then I would put them inside the Columbia plastic trash sack that does not biodegrade. But I've been investigating other options. And so if you ever get takeout food, a lot of it comes in paper bags. And so I've been saving those paper bags. And on the Baggett film, the guy shows how he picks up after his dog with a piece of newspaper. So if you use a piece of newspaper in your paper bag that you got for some other reason, that's another way to pick up after the dog. And then the whole package is biodegradable. So. And then the other point to remind people is that we all lived without plastic bags before they became commonplace. And in fact, most people didn't like them when they first came out. And so, and it's only been, it's a few decades now, but we could go back to living without them. And, if you ask people, if you have to start changing your lifestyle to be more sustainable, this is a pretty painless way of taking one of those steps. Now, this next point is actually kind of complex, so I'm going to take a couple of slides to explain it. So one of the things that was mentioned, there was an opinion editorial in the Tribune that was in opposition to the bag ban. And one of the things that they mentioned was that single-use plastic bags generate fewer greenhouse gas emissions than paper or reusable bags. And so I wanted to explain that point and talk about, the ramifications of it. So when you talk about the greenhouse gas emissions of any kind of a bag or carrier, as they call them in the UK, where the study's from, you have to look at a lot of different factors. And so some of these ones on the screen, you have to look at the production process. Does it use raw materials? And what are those raw materials and where did they come from? The production process of actually creating the bag and how much energy does it use and what kind of energy is it using. The transport, so when you move the raw materials to the production site, as well as once you have a finished bag, you have to transport it from where it's manufactured, which is frequently in China for all of these kinds of bags. And then it gets transported to, the supermarket. And so there's a greenhouse gas effect there. Then the end of life. What happens to the bag at the end of life? Does it get reused as a trash can liner? Does it get recycled? Does it end up in the landfill? Is it burned? What happens to it? And then product avoidance. So whether or not people, if they didn't have the grocery store bag to put in their trash can, would they buy something else? And if they would buy something else, then you've avoided that whole manufacturing process of that trash can liner bag. So those are all the factors. And so this study out of the United Kingdom, done by their Environment Commission, which is kind of has some similarities with our Environmental Protection Agency, they did this really complex study. And so I'm not going to, of course, go into all the details. But the answer is, as with most things in life, it all depends. And what it depends on is how many times you reuse the bag. So where you end up on the greenhouse gas spectrum. And so what this table is showing us, and I brought some examples. So for example, and it makes sense once you start to think about it. So you're comparing this really lightweight thing that doesn't have any really natural things in it like this cotton bag does. So this is much heavier, lasts much longer, but this is very lightweight. And so when you compare the greenhouse gas production with all these factors of this bag to this bag, this one is much less for the initial comparison. But then if you look at how many times you have to reuse this bag or will reuse this bag, eventually this one comes out better. But there is like a startup cost, I guess you would say, in that you have to use this bag enough to overcome the difference in the greenhouse gas emissions between this one and this one. So what this is showing us is that they looked at it a couple different ways. So if you never had a secondary reuse of this bag, so if you did not use this bag ever again and you just threw it away or recycled it, then that's the first column. And this bag, Gretchen, is the single-use plastic bag. If you used it again, if you used about 40% of these again as a trash can liner, and it assumes that you would have bought something to put in your trash can. And so there would have been a production cost there, raw materials, production, transportation, if you really wanted something in your trash can. So it assumes 40% of these were reused and displaced somebody buying something else to put in their trash can. So those are the two columns. So see if I can reach over here. So the first one is comparing a paper bag. So if we have a standard grocery store paper bag, you would have to reuse this bag 3 or 4 times for it to have the same or lower greenhouse gas emissions as the single-use plastic bag. So, and you know, these, I mean, they do rip easily, but you can certainly reuse them if you want to. So if anybody's shops at Lucky's and they get a lot of these kind of bags, then, you know, use them 3 or 4 times to be sure you're doing a better job than plastic. Then there is, and I don't have an example of this, there is what is called a heavy duty plastic bag. So this would be a bag that's still made of plastic, but it's designed to be reused over a long period of time. An example of this that comes to my mind is those bags where you keep your hot or cold food. Those are designed to be used for a long period of time. So that bag also, in order for it to be of equal or lower greenhouse gas emissions, has to be reused 4 or 5 times. Then you get up into these other kind of bags, like, and I think this is an example of what they mean by a non-woven polypropylene bag. So it's still made of some kind of poly material, but it's not woven like a fiber. It's somehow constructed some other way. And so these kind of bags, which there are a lot of them for sale in stores, is you have to reuse it 11 times to 14 times. So then we get to the one that I've had for like almost 20 years now, which is this cotton bag. And the reason that you have to reuse a cotton bag so much is because they counted the production of cotton. So we all know, you know, that are familiar with greenhouse gas emissions, that there's quite a bit of production from agriculture. There's quite a bit of greenhouse gas emissions. And so you've got to count the production of the cotton as well as the actual production of the bag itself, and then what happens at the end of life. So in order for this bag to come out ahead, you have to use it 131 times if there's no reuse and 173 times if there is reuse. So I tried to put that into perspective. So I've had a couple of these bags now for over 15 years. I couldn't be sure. I think it might be 20, but I know it's over 15, and I'm still using them. I wash them. That's why they look kind of cruddy, because I throw them in the clothes washer with my other stuff. But so if I shop once a week, which I usually do, and I reuse this bag then 52 weeks a year for 15 years, that's 780 times already that I've used this bag. And that far exceeds the 173 times that was required to use a cotton bag to make it less greenhouse gas emissions. So I think it's the important message is whichever bag you choose, you have to reuse it, and reuse it if you really want to lower the carbon footprint of what kind of bag that you're using. And another way to look at it, so if you were going to go out and buy a cotton bag today, and by the way, I would recommend that you buy organic cotton, but if you're going to buy a cotton bag today, what would the time period be if you did use it once a week? It would take you about 3 years, really, for it to break even with some of these other kind of bags. But so there is a startup cost to switching, but as long as you reuse it and you keep reusing it, then we come out ahead in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. And then I just want to reemphasize that that's only one factor. Greenhouse gas emissions is only one factor to consider in this choice of paper versus plastic versus polyethylene or propylene or whatever it was, and cotton, because we also have to factor in the litter in the landscape, the impact on the stormwater system, the toxicity of those plastic particles that we talked about impacting the human food chain, and then the impact of both the bags and the particles on wildlife and livestock. So since that's a little complicated, I'll stop and see if there's any questions. What? Oh, the use of fossil fuels, right. Yeah, so they're not, it's not available for other things that are important like heating.
I wonder what hemp bags would, what they're.
Yeah, they didn't include that in the study, but
Well, when you were showing the different kinds of bags, and here's one of these like heavy duty plastic ones, I guess.
uh-huh.
They're making more and more of these, like, I think that's what this is.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. Yeah, so those are actually probably, in terms of a carbon footprint, those are actually better than the cotton. Unless you're going to be like me and keep it for life. Yeah, I mean, they're still going strong. So the handles have finally gotten a little fray on them, but that's like, 15, 20 years into it. So never said I wasn't thrifty. Okay, so the next objection that we get is I can't remember to take my reusable bags to the store. So really the easiest way, and I had to do this to train myself, is, when you're first learning to use your reusable bags, as soon as you unload them, you put them back in the car. And we actually keep some in my car and some in my husband's car, because every now and then he'll be like, well, let's stop at the store for something. And I'll be like, oh, I don't have my bags. So we started keeping some in his car too. So that's the best way to learn. I heard another person that said if they forgot their bags, then they refused to take any other bags at checkout, and they put every item back in their cart, pushed the cart out to the car, and then unloaded every item back into their car. And that, was such a tedious process that they never forgot their bags again. So that's another perspective on it. And then also, you can get really small bags that compress to fit in like a purse or a backpack or briefcase, or they come, some of them, with attachments to hook on the outside of your backpack. And so this is one I carry in my purse, and it's just a lovely little bag. So it's all plastic, so it would only have to be reused a few times to have a good carbon footprint. And see, it's actually a nice big full-size bag, just like the single-use grocery store bags. So those are really nifty too. Okay, so another complaint that we get is that and I'm not sure why people care about this unless they're a grocery store retailer, but
Can we backtrack?
sure.
I also have heard people say that the way that they remember to take their bags to the store is when they're writing their shopping list out, the first thing they put on their shopping list is take bags.
Take bags. Yeah, so the comment for the people on the web is that one way to remember, another way to remember to take your shopping bags is to put on your shopping list as the first item, take bags. And that is a good way to remember it. Okay, so another consideration is what is the impact on the retailer of forcing perhaps more plastic or paper bag use? Because initially people may not remember their reusable bags, and they might have to buy these paper bags. And so it is true that paper bags do cost the retailers more. The information I found showed that they cost about 6 cents, whereas plastic bags only cost 2 cents a piece or less. But in our ordinance, the retailers would actually be able to collect 10 cents per bag for the customers who request them, except for the ones who are going to be waived because they're on some kind of food assistance program. So the retailers are going to probably come out ahead if they start selling paper bags. Yes, Alice?
So as an EEC member, I just want to caution people that when the council takes a look at this, or staff takes a look at this, they may easily make other recommendations. One of which is on this 10 cents fee. Some communities, Montgomery County, Maryland, that I'm most familiar with, took 5 cents for the grocery store and 5 cents for education, say on stormwater. So hopefully, a lot of people will come out to the council meeting, when it's happening, so people can respond to whatever proposals are made,
Right,
if we think this is really advantageous.
right. Okay, and the comment was just that some cities do take a portion of the 10-cent fee that goes to the city, and a portion of it stays with the retailer, and then that 10-cent, or the portion of the fee that goes to the city is often used for giving away reusable bags, as well as education about the hazards of plastic bags and that type of thing. Okay, another point that was made in the opposition editorial was that sometimes bag bans reduce retail sales or drive sales outside the city limits. And there really isn't a lot of evidence of that. And in the city of Columbia, the grocery stores, at least to my knowledge, and I'm going to check on this further, but to my knowledge, they're all in the city limits. So there's not one that's just like right outside, like a mile outside the city. If you wanted to go outside the city, you're going to have to drive to one of the nearby communities like Boonville or something to find another grocery store. So, we.
People are more upset about our maybe convenience store owners because they think, well, maybe someone won't come to their convenience store when they can go to one.
Yeah, that's true. The comment was being made that convenience store owners might be more impacted by that, but I think the operative word there is convenience. And the reason people go to a convenience store in the first place is because it's convenient to their location, and they already pay more for their carton of milk if they go buy it from a convenience store or their candy bar. So.
I will say that during the commission meeting, we looked at that closely and tossed around maybe including an exemption. But then we got to thinking about how many times do you walk out of the convenience store with a bag?
Yeah, that's what yeah. Most people don't buy enough to get a bag. Yeah.
However, the Convenience Store Association will be a major person who's going to spend bucks to have this not pass. We know
We better do it pretty soon.
So the comment was that the commission did look closely at the convenience stores and felt that, that they are not a place where people actually get a lot of bags. And so, it might not be such a problem for people shopping at convenience stores. But Alice also made the comment that it's anticipated the convenience stores may fight the ordinance. So. Okay, and we talked about this earlier. There's been some people that said, well, bag fees could be difficult for the poor. And right now the proposal is, and this was actually a lot of different cities have this, where the paper bag fee would be waived for people, certain participants on low-income food programs like SNAP or women and infant children. Another objection can be that bag fees are a tax. And this only comes into play if the money somehow is being transferred to the city, the government. And right now, at least the way the ordinance is written, the money would not be transferred to the city government. So therefore, it's not a tax. So it would be retained by the merchant. And then another big objection is the city government should not take away our choices as consumers. And, a lot of people are like, don't tell me what to do. But the problem is that Americans have had a really long time to demonstrate that they would recycle plastic, and they haven't. And we've talked about a lot of the health and safety impacts of both on humans and on wildlife. And so it's really important, that, and I think we all know that in our society, people don't make good choices. I mean, it's hard to believe, but you actually have to tell parents to make their children sit in a car seat and in the back seat for their own safety. The one thing they most want to protect in the world is their child, but you still have to regulate by law to tell parents how to do that and how to take care of their child and, make sure they wear seat belts. We also, of course, had to clean up our water with the Clean Water Act, and we had to clean up our air with the Clean Air Act, and nobody was doing that willingly. The government had to make them do it for the public good. And I think, that's the same thing with this. People, they aren't educated. They don't know the harm of plastics and single-use plastic bags. as possible, and for so convenience is a very powerful motivator for people, and so that's why we just feel that the government actually has to legislate on this, because too many people will not make the educated choice. Okay, some of the frequently asked questions. So we'll move away from objections and just talk about questions. So will stores still offer plastic bag recycling at the store? I've gotten this several times, and I did talk to one store, and they said they definitely would, because they'll still have the produce bags that are, their store will be giving out, and they just want it for the convenience of their customers. It's something they're used to doing, so they don't anticipate stopping. Will the store still offer an incentive? And the ordinance, of course, actually clarifies that they can definitely still do that. And like at Lucky's Market, they've confirmed they would still offer their donation to charity. If you bring your own bag, you get the wooden nickel and you can put it in the box. And other stores, I would anticipate from a marketing perspective, which is what I did for a living, from a competition and customer satisfaction perspective, other stores would continue to offer their 5 cents, like Target and Hy-Vee and several others do that. Will stores that don't offer bags be forced to offer paper bags? And the answer, the way the ordinance is written now, is no. Nobody would force a store like the Natural Grocer to offer a paper bag, because they don't offer one today. At the Natural Grocer, you either bring your own bag or you can have a cardboard box. And so nobody would tell them they have to start stocking plastic bags, or paper bags, excuse me. And then this relates to the sanitation question. Will I still be able to put my meat in a plastic bag? Now, I interpreted it to mean that you would need to get your bag for your meat at the meat counter. But I guess what you guys are saying is maybe not. You would maybe still be able to get it bagged at the checkout counter.
Well, right. I think the way that it's written is the ordinance says you cannot get a single-use plastic bag at the point of sale to carry out your groceries. And then there's an exception, right, for sanitation and those other items.
Yeah.
So they'll be there, but you won't get them unless you fit into one of those.
Yeah, but that actually to me seems like it would set up more customer satisfaction arguments, because people will be like, well, why can't you give me a bag? You got one right there. But it'll be like, no, unless you have some meat, you can't have it. So I would actually say that the meat bag should be back at the meat counter. But anyway, I guess you'll be able to get a plastic bag for your meat somehow, some way. Or fish, or greasy Chinese food. So a lot of people ask, isn't it worse to use paper bags instead of plastic bags because of the need to protect the forest? And this is true. We definitely do not want to drive people to suddenly go back to taking home, 5 to 10 paper bags, because there is an impact on the forest. There is a greenhouse gas impact from, processing all that wood. What we want to do is drive a shift to reusable bags, not paper bags. And if people have a paper bag, they can take that back to the store. You don't have to buy any of these other kind of bags. You can start saving your paper bags and take those back to the store. But that's why we put a 10-cent charge, at least in the recommended ordinance, so that it won't just let people automatically shift to a paper bag, because that is not better. The good thing about paper bags is they are biodegradable and compostable, but it's still, there's all the other implications that we don't really want to increase the use of paper bags. One question was, why not ban plastic bags in all stores? And we discussed this when Sierra Club first wrote the proposed ordinance, and I know the Energy and Environment Commission has also discussed it. And we decided that, given this is kind of the first city in this area to try this, that it would be maybe easier for people to accept if we just went after stores selling groceries, because those are where you get the majority of your plastic bags. Because when you buy groceries, you can get 5 to 10 or more of those things. But maybe if you go to the clothing store, you just come home with one. So we just felt that go after the major source of them first and get people's buy-in. And then you can always come back at a future date and expand it to all retail. Why not charge a fee on plastic bags? Again, the goal is to eliminate plastic bags because people don't handle them correctly. They become litter, and it has all those negative consequences. So, so that's why we didn't want to just go with a fee on bags, because people, rich people particularly, would just pay the fee and, maybe still mishandle their bags. But the other thing is that I believe the commission researched this and found that in some places they have implemented fees on plastic bags, and initially it cut down people using the bags, but after a while people just adjusted to that being something they paid for, and they reverted back to their old ways. So Alice, you want to make another comment?
Yeah, out of the close to like 180 bans in the country, only 7 of them, and that does include Montgomery County now, offered the choice of having plastic. Almost all of them said no plastic bags.
Right. Because there's so many other negative consequences of plastic bags. So. Okay, and then why not switch to compostable bags? Because there's a new thing out, where they're made like of cornstarch and things like that. So why not switch to that? Well, part of the problem is that it's really hard to tell the difference without looking closely between a compostable bag and a biodegradable bag of some other form, and one of those lightweight single-use bags. And so that is one downside to it. The other thing is that people would still mishandle them. They would still end up as litter in the landscape because they're still lightweight. They could still blow around. They can still end up in the streams. So yeah, they will eventually biodegrade, but not quick enough to avoid the danger to wildlife and getting in the machinery and things like that. And then plus the reason that in our ordinance that we proposed as Sierra Club, we figured, Columbia does not even have a citywide composting program. So if you have a compostable bag, how's it going to get composted without some kind of composting program? So that's why we didn't put it in. Yeah, but they put them inside that plastic bag that's not biodegradable.
Well, they must be ripping those bags.
Somehow.
They wouldn't be getting nothing.
Yeah. I figured a lot of those bags do rip, but I don't know if they all do. So when they dump them and all that. But okay, so let's talk about some actions that we can take. I know some of you have already been involved in the actions, but okay, so the situation is heating up. As Jan said, the report's being presented tonight. We expect to vote sometime in February. So now's the time to contact your city council person and the mayor. Letter, call, email, whatever you're comfortable with, to say you support the ordinance. Sign a petition if you have not already. Talk to anyone you know who's willing to discuss it about the reasons that you support a ban on these kind of disposable single-use plastic bags. Letters to the editor are welcome for any of the newspapers. We will, as the working group, be continuing to pursue additional publicity activities, as Jan mentioned earlier. One of the things that we're going to be doing, so if anybody's available, is Loie Love, who's on our committees, organizing an effort to collect petitions on January 25th from 12 to 2 p.m. So if you want information on that, you can look on Facebook under Bag Ban Petition Signing. That's the name of the event, that first part there, Bag Ban Petition Signing, and she'll be putting more details up. And then we just decided today, Melanie agreed that we could collect petition signatures outside of the Wild and Scenic Movie Festival that's coming up on February 8th. So we'll also be, hopefully somebody will wear the bag costume. I'll be out of town, so maybe Alice, you could do it. We need somebody to wear the bag costume and several people to help collect signatures from people as they're entering the film festival. And it's also an interesting event because then after you collect petition signatures, you could go in and watch the movies. So we have an online petition. I've included the long URL and then a shorter one here. If you haven't already, if you could email this URL around to your friends that are Columbia residents and ask them to sign the online petition. You can post it on Facebook, whatever you're comfortable with. We would definitely appreciate that. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Alice, go ahead.
This is just a great list. The whole presentation was great. But the one thing I really encourage people, if they're going to bother to contact a city council person, contact all of them. When I lived outside the city limits and was in the county, but you don't have to do them in the same email. You could individualize it, because we all know these are citywide issues. So you could be more personal. I'm a 4th Ward resident if you're contacting Ian, but contact all of them. And of course the mayor. They all need to hear from us. It's a citywide issue. And the only other thing I'd suggest is if people did put their email on the petitions, we could let them know. That would be a lot of work, but that things are heating up and this would be time to contact.
Right. And we do have some emails. Yeah. So for people on the line, the comment was that don't just contact your city council person and the mayor, contact all of them, because Alice is saying that as a citywide issue, there's, benefit to communicating to all the city council people. Terry, you had a question or comment?
Does any other city in Missouri have an ordinance like this?
Not that the question is, does any other city in Missouri have an ordinance like this? And the answer is not that we know of. So yeah, other cities in the Midwest.
There was a great article recently in the Kansas City Star that they had done some kind of a survey, and they kind of looked into the issue and didn't really feel like there was a whole lot of support for it yet. When was that? Maybe 2 months ago.
They did a survey in Kansas City. Okay.
Yeah, it was a really good article about bag bans and other cities in Kansas looking into them.
Right. So just for the people on the phone, the comment was that there was an article in the Kansas City Star about a survey done in Kansas City that showed maybe the people in Kansas City weren't quite ready for it yet. But Columbia is way ahead of Kansas City. So yes,
In your research, did you run into when they are recycled, what are they made into, and how far are they shipped?
No, that study that I looked at did not include that information, but go ahead.
I might know the answer to that. Most of the single-use plastic bags are, I think what I've read is they're made into that.
Carpeting, aren't they?
That's what I've
Maybe,
heard.
but I'm thinking of that plastic lumber.
Oh, trucks?
Yeah, stuff like that. That's what I've read. But then other things that I've read say that they're really low quality plastic, so they can only be
Reused once, recycled
one
once.
time, and that's why they're made into that lumber, because that's it's a good use for it,
You
because
like
that's
playground
gonna,
equipment.
it's gonna be used for a
Thousands of
long
bags.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Better than carpet.
So the question was, what are plastic bags recycled into when they are recycled? And so the discussion was that that I think I'd read that they get made sometimes into carpeting. And then another comment was that they also potentially are remade into that plastic lumber that you can buy. But one thing we have read is that you can only reuse the plastic from a plastic bag one time. So then the carpeting or whatever it is isn't going to be recycled again. And I do have to say that at the holidays, I found a sweater that was made of recycled bottles. So, that was kind of fun because they're starting to do a lot of different things with different plastics. But
then the question is, do you want to be wearing plastic?
no, I guess I shouldn't, but I like the idea so much it was made of something recycled that I did buy it. It's actually pretty soft. So,
Recycled plastic.
yeah, it's recycled plastic bottles. So, yes. All right. Anybody have any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming. And for once, we don't actually have to run out of the room, so everybody can stay and chat. And I just need to close out our Google Hangout. So, thank you very much.